So with Civil War existing as one of Marvel's most revered events taking place in the mid-2000s, this story goes hand in hand with the death of Captain America, which actually brings the Civil War conflict to a close. In a 2007 interview with Comic Book Resources, writer Ed Brubaker had stated that when he was brought on board to write for Captain America with Volume 5, Steve Rogers' death at the hands of the Red Skull was actually something that he had planned all along. However, because Civil War was close to release, with the ending somewhat ironed out but not set in stone, he was forced to move up his timetable regarding the return of the Red Skull and the assassination of Captain America. To this end, Ed Brubaker introduced several characters that would play a key role in this story. The first of these, and perhaps the most important, was Bucky Barnes. Having been written out of continuity at the close of the original Captain America comics in the 1950s, Marvel's explanation for a lack of Bucky Barnes following the rediscovery of Captain America in the 1960s was that Bucky Barnes had simply been killed. And so using this as a jumping-off platform, Ed Brubaker retconned the history in stating that the Russians, following his presumed death, had actually taken Bucky. With his memories wiped, he was transformed into the Winter Soldier, operating behind the scenes under the control of KGB director Alexander Lukin. Bringing the Red Skull in as part of the story's build-up, Bucky Barnes was tasked with assassinating the Red Skull and retrieving his cosmic cube under Lukin's orders. While succeeding in collecting the cube, the Red Skull had actually used his power to transfer his mind to the body of Alexander Lukin in order to stave off death. As we discussed in my video on the Winter Soldier, the story progressed in a manner that saw the cube fall into Captain America's possession. Using his power during the fight, Bucky was able to regain control of himself but went into hiding in order to come to terms with his past actions. The next person I'd like to draw your attention to is Sharon Carter. As the niece of Peggy Carter, the former love interest of Steve Rogers during World War II, Sharon spent most of her youth regaled by her aunt with tales of both her own exploits as well as the greatness of Captain America. Looking to follow in the steps of Peggy, Sharon enlisted with S.H.I.E.L.D., and while her initial appearance came in Tales of Suspense issue number 65, it wouldn't be until issue number 85 that she would actually meet Captain America for the first time. Now, after being rescued by Steve Rogers from a small-time villain named Batroc the Leaper, Sharon Carter immediately became enamored with Captain America, and as her character progressed to Marvel's continuity, a romance formed between the two of them. Now, this is something I'd like you to keep in the back of your head, because the romance between Captain America and Sharon Carter will actually be a very significant aspect of Steve Rogers' death. Having said all of that, with Civil War playing out as the battleground between Captain America's Secret Avengers and Iron Man's Registered Avengers, ending with Captain America's surrender to authorities, Ed Brubaker began to set his plan in motion by bringing together Crossbones, Bucky Barnes, Red Skull, Dr. Faustus, who is a master of hypnotism, Sharon Carter, and Nick Fury for the story of Death of a Dream, the death of Captain America. So following the arrest of Steve Rogers at the conclusion of Civil War for failing to register in addition to inciting treason and sedition against the United States, we pick up with Bucky Barnes following his return. Operating alongside Nick Fury, who is currently in an undisclosed location due to having learned about the events that will lead into the Secret Invasion storyline, while it's a little ambiguous here, the idea seems to be that Nick Fury, Bucky Barnes, and Sharon Carter are planning an escape for Steve Rogers. However, once Captain America arrives, we find that he is the subject of both revile and praise from the protesters outside of the courthouse. With some throwing food at him, but others praising his stance, the public's response is a result of both their disdain for Steve Rogers' actions in standing against America, but also in support of his willingness to stand up for what he believed to be right. However, as the US Marshals are leading him up the steps, Steve Rogers realizes that there is a sniper in a window taking aim at him. From here, we transition to Dr. Faustus and Red Skull in the body of Alexander Lukin. With the coverage of Captain America's trial broadcast on all the news stations, both men are watching the events unfold. Realizing that Captain America has spotted the sniper, the immediate reaction by Dr. Faustus is to call off the plan. However, as Red Skull states, this is the plan. With Steve Rogers in handcuffs and unable to protect himself, and with both Dr. Faustus and the Red Skull using their sources to ensure that Steve Rogers ends up at the federal courthouse, Captain America has been put in a position where he is virtually powerless against whoever plans to shoot him. With the sniper opening fire, the scene is met with immediate panic from the onlookers, as well as Sharon Carter and Bucky leaping into action. However, where Sharon Carter arrives at Steve Rogers' location, it's revealed that he had sustained a gunshot wound to the stomach. Pleading with Sharon Carter to ensure that civilians aren't injured and to get them out of harm's way, he simply collapses. Now, where Sharon Carter went to the aid of Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes alongside Falcon attempt to locate the sniper. After arriving in the room where the shot originated, Bucky finds the shooter had vacated. However, because Falcon was unaware of Bucky's return and because their last meeting took place during a fight with Captain America, Falcon initially believes that Bucky is the trigger man, but once cooler heads prevail, the two men realize that the real shooter has gotten away. Taking to the air, Bucky states that according to Nick Fury, one of the helicopters is masquerading as a news helicopter and that it has swooped in to grab the shooter. At this point, we learn that the sniper is actually Brock Rumlow, and as Bucky Barnes shoots out the tail of the helicopter, Crossbones leaps into Bucky and Falcon in order to both cushion his fall, as well as engage both men. Now, while Bucky's prodigious skill as a fighter allows him to subdue Crossbones almost immediately, because he was underground during the entire Civil War conflict and is considered an unregistered hero, Falcon advises him to simply leave before being captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. And taking the advice, Bucky simply departs to go back underground again. Now at this point, we switch back to Captain America as he's being transported to the hospital. With Sharon Carter at his side, Steve Rogers is able to mumble a few words regarding his love for her, but as we transition away, it's revealed to us by way of a news broadcast that Steve Rogers had actually died on his way to the hospital. At this point, we transition to Sharon Carter following Captain America's arrival and the subsequent attempts to resuscitate him. While trying to clear her head and cope with the loss, Sharon Carter is met by a woman named Sin. As a daughter of the Red Skull, Sin is extremely minor in this story, with this being her only major role, but after approaching Sharon, she states that Dr. Faustus says to remember. And so where you may have noticed that this story seemed a little ambiguous up until this point, what we're going to do is provide the flashback offered in this narrative, as well as grab some information from other sources to paint a more complete picture. As is revealed to us, in Captain America Volume 5, issue number 22, it was shown that Dr. Faustus had been working as a psychiatrist for S.H.I.E.L.D. while employing technology, allowing him to change his appearance. As one of Captain America's oldest enemies, Dr. Faustus, working alongside the Red Skull, had been hypnotizing Sharon Carter into falling in love with Steve Rogers. Using this as a way in, Faustus and Red Skull began plotting their assassination. With a Civil War event distracting Captain America, Red Skull and Dr. Faustus employed Brock Rumlow. Operating as a sniper at the courthouse, Brock Rumlow fired a shot in the shoulder of Captain America, and while it did hit its mark, this functioned strictly as a distraction. Under the hypnotic control of Dr. Faustus, Sharon Carter approached Captain America with a pistol and fired the killing shot. And so as the gravity of the situation begins to come into full view, we find that Sharon Carter is left with the realization that she had killed Captain America. So following the death of Captain America, the story proved itself to be a monumental success, coming in at 290,000 issues sold, making it the highest selling comic for the month of March. In addition to this, as a mainstay character from Marvel, the death of Captain America received national and even international attention. While various interviews from news outlets regarding fan reaction fell in the direction of some fans believing it was time for Captain America to go, while others hated the decision, the problem here was that the story couldn't simply stop with Sharon Carter shooting Steve Rogers. In order to wrap up the narrative that had been started, Ed Brubaker released two other segments to the death of Captain America titled The Burden of Dreams and The Man Who Bought America. While both stories were considered a bit lackluster compared to the events preceding them, The Burden of Dreams saw Marvel introducing Bucky Barnes as the new Captain America, something that was highly anticipated by fans following Steve Rogers' death. Furthermore, under Jeff Loeb, the Death of Captain America event saw Marvel publishing 5 tie-in stories. Under the Mantle of Fallen Sun, each story dealt with the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, with each story following Bucky Barnes, Wolverine, Hawkeye, Spider-Man, and finally, the combination of superheroes and America as Captain America's funeral is held, which contained another iconic scene depicting Tony Stark at the side of Steve Rogers' corpse, saying his farewells. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.